Hello all, this is 6.3, solving multi-step inequalities. It's very similar to 6.1 and 6.2. So here we'll see a inequality that is multi-step. We'll solve it exactly how we would solve a normal equation, keeping in mind that if we multiply or divide by a negative, I'll have to switch the direction of the inequality. So the first step, if this was a regular equation, would be to subtract 6 on both sides. So I would end up with negative 3 halves x is greater than or equal to 12. And since I get there, I now know that I need to multiply by this reciprocal in order to isolate x. So if I do it to one side, I'll have to do it to the other as well, which will be 24 over negative 3, which will be negative 8, meaning that x is less than or equal to, because I multiplied the other side by a negative, negative 8. And remember, we write this in set notation. So my answer would be like so. And the way I would graph that is exactly the same as yesterday, or earlier today in class, rather. And it's going to be a closed circle because it's less than or equal to, and it will point that way. So if you were to go ahead and give these a try, you would find that this would give you x is greater than 6, which would mean if you had a number line like so, here's your 6, and it'll be all things greater. On the second problem, you'd subtract by 1 on both sides, so you'd have 2x is less than or equal to 4. You're dividing by 2, which is positive, therefore your inequality faces the same direction. In set notation, it'll look like that. And if I were to draw it and graph it, I've got my 0, I've got my 2. It's going to be a closed circle because it includes 2, as well as everything less than 2. So if I were to go ahead and do these two, this one I would add 4 to both sides, so I'll get 3x is greater than 28, which means that x is greater than 28 divided by 3. That's totally fine that it's a fraction. It's still going to be fine as my answer. So 28 over 3 is the same as 9 1/3, so it'll be roughly right here. And it's everything greater, so it'll be this way. Now, hopefully you caught my mistake there, which is that I put a closed circle on 9 1/3. It should really be an open circle there. Okay? For the second one, you're going to get x is less than or equal to negative 1, which means that here's negative 1. It's a closed circle because it's less than or equal to, and it's all things to the left. So hopefully that makes sense. And giving these 4 a try, this one you're going to go ahead and get 4x is greater than 8, which means that x is greater than 2. This one, similar starting point, you have negative 4x is greater than 8. However, now that you're dividing by negative, you're going to get x is less than negative 2 because we had to switch the signs. Okay, for the second one, we'll subtract 3. I'm sorry, for the third one. And we're going to get negative x over 2 is greater than 5. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 2 so that I can isolate x. So I'll get x is less than, because I have to switch the sign since I multiplied by a negative, less than negative 10. And for the last one, I'll get x over 2 is greater than 5. This time I'm just multiplying by a positive 2, so I don't have to change the sign. So I'll get x is greater than 10. So hopefully those made sense, and I'd like you to try the next problems on your own as your examples. So go ahead and pause the video and try this example. All right, so let's take a look at this word problem. So a cell phone company advertises a plan with 400 minutes per month for less than the competition. The price includes a $3.50 local tax. So that means that we have 400 minutes times however much a minute costs, plus the $3.50 local tax. And the competition charges $43.50, so what does the original company charge per minute? Well, we know that the original company charges less than the competition. So that means that this is less than the competition's price, which is $43.50. I can go ahead and solve that just like I would solve it without a word problem. And we'll get 400x is less than $40. When I divide by 400 on either side, I find out that x must be less than 10 cents per minute, meaning that the original cell phone company must charge less than 10 cents a minute in order to be charging less than the competition. So hopefully that made sense. For the next few problems, I'd like you to try them on your own as your example problems. So here's the first one. Your next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. And let's take a look at this one together. So here I want to first of all turn this into a plus negative so that I remember to distribute the entire -2. And I'll get 2d minus 4 over here. These are going to combine to be -13d. And I will add this on both sides. And I'll get 18 is greater than 15d minus 4. Add 4 to both sides. I will get 22 is greater than 15d. If I divide by 15, that tells me that for the set where d is our variable, a d must be less than 22 over 15, which is the same as 1 7/15, which will be roughly here. And since it's all things less, it'll be going this direction. So hopefully that made sense. With that in mind, go ahead and try the next example. And continue with this example. And this one, which is a challenge, don't worry if you don't get it. This is a challenge example. Continuing to challenge. And here is your final example. I realize there was a lot of examples in here, but hopefully it gave you some good practice. Please have any questions ready to bring in for class. Make a note in your notes if you have any specific questions so that I can see them on eBackpack. And go ahead and turn in your notes to eBackpack. Have a great evening, and I will see you all Monday.